Hey everybody, welcome to Workforce Gaming. I'm Brad, here with Doug.
Hey.
Armored Core 6, Fires
Mm-hmm.
of Rubicon.
Yes.
Background on this game, because I think it's important for a lot of things. This is a
Sure.
FromSoft game.
Yep.
Elden
Yes, it
Ring,
is.
Dark Souls, Bloodborne, etc.
Mm-hmm.
It is the sixth in the Armored Core series, which again, I find very weird that this game took like a 10-year hiatus, like a very long
Something
hiatus, and
like
they
that,
still
yeah.
still came back with the sixth. But basically, it is a giant mech game that, from my understanding, you spend a lot of time tinkering in menus and
Mm-hmm.
trying to max your stats and bars and that sort of thing. So tell me why this is the greatest game ever, because that's all of the text messages that I've been getting for the last, 3 days.
I'm so sorry. I love this game. I can't tell you how much I love this game. It's not a game for everybody. It is 100% a From Software game, but man, it just has so many of my favorite little things in games. And just from like start to finish, I just had an amazing time with this game. Like I think even some of my favorite games, I'm like, I didn't really like this part. I didn't really like this part. Every part of Armored Core 6 is like, no pun intended, like firing on all cylinders. Like it is just so sick. So I think, so really just like basic framework of the game, it's you have missions. So it's just like, well, actually, let's start with the story, because I really like the story hook. I think the story hook is really fun. So the game begins, and a guy essentially buys your character from some sort of like weird stasis pod. And what you are is you are a really old generation modified human that's supposed to that's designed to like pilot these mechs. You're
Mhm.
not the top of the line. I think like the top of the line is like generation 9, and you're just like generation 4. And he basically takes you and he hires you out as a mercenary to these two corporations that are attacking a planet trying to get its last little bit of resources.
Because this is
The guy,
very far future, post-apocalyptic, that kind of thing,
yes,
right?
yeah. So like the setting of Fires of Rubicon. So on this planet, there's this planet called Rubicon. There was a giant. They had this like sort of technology. You can think of it almost like nuclear energy, called Coral, and at some point in time it caused this massive explosion, basically set fire to the entire planet. So the only, and like for the last 100 years, these corporations have basically just been attacking the last remnants of this planet, trying to get at that resource. So it was like, so, and it's really fun because when you play the game, it's like, okay, I'm working for these corporations as a mercenary, and you work for rival corporations. So for one mission, you'll be attacking that corporation. For the next mission, you'll be attacking that corporation, or attacking like the liberation front. And at some point in the game, you meet like the liberation front, like the group that's like trying to save Rubicon. And at some point, that when you ever play that in a game, it's like, oh, okay, so that's like the rebel group I'll join eventually.
Yeah.
And then like 8 hours in, I was like, still fighting for these corporations, taking out these poor rebel guys, these poor like liberator guys. And like it never really lets you be the good guy, which I like.
Is that a downer?
Yes, I love it. I like it because in all these war games, they try to make you like the hero. And like a lot of American war games too, it's like you're the hero. And in this one, you are literally just some grunt that nobody cares about, that they throw into like these missions where they think you're going to die because you don't really work for the corporations. You're essentially a contractor. And they just think you're going to die. Like, okay, just see how he goes. We don't give a shit about him. He's like some guy who owed a lot of money, which is why he was sold on the black market, all this stuff. So it's just this really interesting setup of just you're being the bad guy and working for these mercenary. You're just like some just shit mercenary, and your handler hates you. And it's just, yeah, it's really really grimy.
Does that make your impact on the overall story like feel less impactful, I guess? Like, is that like less purposeful? Like, do you have a purpose in this, or is it just to like, go do the shit, go do the shit?
It's the thing that you're doing. It's kind of this race to get to this like source of Coral. So like you're moving through the story, and because they always throw you as like kind of like the frontline guy, you're always like, you're actually the one propelling the story, because as you're getting like notoriety between these corporations, they're realizing, well, actually this guy's doing pretty good. We can probably get to this resource if we just keep using this one guy. So it is, I guess the question is like, I kind of like that sort of, I liked the ickiness of it. I just thought that was like really interesting. I mean, it doesn't feel purposeless because you are driving the plot forward. Like you do have some agency in the plot. especially near the end when you're making some decisions. There's like actually some decisions that you can make. You can do this mission or do this mission, especially near the end.
Okay.
And it was really, really cool, especially as you get near the end and you sort of realize what this quarrel means, what these corporations means, what the Liberation Front means. And the story is told really, really, really clearly, which I enjoyed. Because From Software games are always kind of like a little vague, to put it lightly. So when you fight certain bosses in Elden Ring or whatever, you kind of have like a grasp on what that character is. But it can still be like a really epic fight. But in this one, like they make it very, very clear of like what your motivation is. Well, not your motivation, but what the corporation motivations are, what the Liberation Front's motivations are. So when you're doing these fights, they're like these really high tension, high emotion fights because you understand why this person you're fighting is fighting what they're fighting for. And in this situation, depending on who you're working for, that's who you're fighting for. So it's this really sort of, I just really love that sort of this atmosphere and plot because the corporations, they have like a little mission brief at the beginning. They're so impersonal when they talk about this stuff because it's just they're hiring you as a subcontractor. It's just some guy in an office, some off-world planet who's hiring you as like a subsidiary of a subsidiary sort of thing. So when you're getting your mission briefs, it's not like it's like, oh, we're doing this for the good fight. It's like, okay, so
General so-and-so is contacting you because...
No, it's like, okay, so we contacted your handler and we need you to take care of this one. It's like a guy just setting up a business contract. And it's really interesting how cold they treat that setting. And I just really, really love that setting. So that's just the setting. So I was just like, this is amazing. And then the actual combat is just utterly incredible. It is, if you've ever played Zone of the Enders...
Yes, I have.
It is really, really high speed action that is just really fun. You are really zooming all over the place really fast, and it just and your mech just feels like a freaking monster. It feels so good to play. So it's just like really cool setting, really, really fun. Just the immediate action stuff.
Yeah.
And then the tinkering is also really fun.
Okay, so this is what I want to get into because
I know.
There's two things in this that have prevented me from playing this game so far. One of them is the tinkering, because I hate my sliders. And the second thing is that it has FromSoft on the box. So let's start with it. So let's jump into these tinkers here, like the tinkering here.
Yeah.
What am I tinkering with? How much am I tinkering with? How much can I fuck myself over because I didn't tinker right?
So the tinkering is super, super cool. So actually, because you can tinker, you can never be totally screwed, which is kind of fun. So, okay, let's say I'm going to kind of use Souls as a reference. Let's say I kind of created a strength build character in Souls, and then I get to a boss that's like, I should have had a magic build, and you're just like, well, I'm 50 hours in and I can't do anything. But in this one, because you can tinker so much, you can just go, okay, let's say I like playing a really heavy character, and all of a sudden I come to a fight, and there's a lot of like really fast guys and my guy just like can't keep up. It's like, well, I'm not screwed. What I can do is just create a mech that's really, really light and fast on his feet for this mission. So what you end up doing is you end up creating kind of like a repository of like 2 or 3 mechs that you go between. Like, okay, here's my really heavy gun guy who's like good for particular boss fights or particular missions. Here's my really, really light on the feet one. So what you're essentially doing is like you're building character classes that you're able to swap between. And the thing that's like really fun, so in the game when you're playing, you have you basically your basic movement options are like you have like a really, really lightweight one that I loved using. But you can only use lightweight weapons because it's like based on your legs or something like that. So like if you have a light character, you can't use like tons of really heavy weapons. You can use maybe one. But then if you have another heavy character, they can use the really heavy weapons, but they might be a little bit slower. So you have 4 weapons at any time. And it was really interesting going into a fight and then just realizing you're totally outgunned. You're like, well, I'm totally screwed because I just don't have the right build for it. But if you die, you can immediately go to the garage and like, okay, I think that maybe I just need to make my character a little bit faster, so I'm going to make a little bit less weight. Okay, this gun for this boss fight wasn't doing shit because, so for example, like you have like missiles locks on. Some bosses are so fast or some characters are so fast, the missiles will just go by them. So it's like this gun is like literally useless in this fight. But I know for a fast guy, I can use this one. So what you're doing as you're going through the game, you're essentially creating character classes for yourself for different missions. And the thing that's really nice is that you can, once you kind of find your mech, you can essentially play that mission for like 4 or 5 missions in a row before they do like a mech check where it's like, yeah, your mech was like good for these few missions, but like you kind of need to specialize for this particular boss.
Okay.
And it's so that, and that's the thing I think is really funny when people talk about this game, because I thought, even when I was hearing myself talk about this, like, and hearing other people talk about it before, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to like that at all.
Yeah.
But to me, when I actually got into it, it's like, oh, this is just the stuff I love about RPGs that takes forever to get to. It's like, you know, if I have a magic character, I guess I'll just never see what the sword guy does. Like, oh, nope, I can just build a sword guy real quick. Or I can just really build whatever. So you're like, building. Oh, sorry, keep going.
Do you have the consistent resources to do that? Like, do you ever like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Okay. So like, it's never, you don't get to a point where you're just like, well, I tried a sword guy, that didn't work. I tried a magic guy, that didn't work. Ran out of resources. So
you can go back and replay any mission. You can grind missions for cash. So like, that's your sort of like grinding in the background. It's like, okay, this enemy has a special shield that like I can't get through, and it seems like none of my weapons are. So I go to the shop. It's like, oh, actually, I think this one does really good against shields, and I don't have that, and I can just buy it and add it to my mech.
Okay.
And it's really, really fun in the tinkering. It really just the way I describe this is just like RPG mechanics. It just reminds me of a lot of RPGs, and just kind of getting to the. It just feels like it feels like an RPG. And the thing that's really neat is you can immediately feel it in the mech. Like if I know it's going to be heavier, it feels heavier. So if like my mech is too heavy for this fight, I know I need a lighter character. So it's like an easy thing to fix. If this gun isn't working, I know I can go to this gun. So it's an easy thing to fix. It moves so quickly. Like the actual editing is so quick that it's never, you're not sitting there looking at an Excel sheet for a half hour. You're maybe modifying it. I think like the longest I ever modified a mech was like 5 minutes or something like that, because it's just so quick of swapping in and out the parts. And it's really fun. I think some people described it as like tuning a car in a game. I hate that kind of stuff.
I was going to say, that's just not fun. You just took this conversation from a 10 out of 10 interested to a 3 out of 10 with that analogy.
But I think that's how other people describe it, because you can feel it. I feel like in RPG stuff, and we've talked about this before, it's hard to feel it immediately in the character when you're making these changes in the background.
Yes.
But in this one, it's like just so clear, and and it feels very intentional. Like you never not know what your mech's going to feel like when you put it on. You're like, I know I made it heavy. I know it's going to feel heavy. I know I have these type of legs, so it's going to move this type of way. And so as you get further and further in game, in the back of your head, you can make those small tweaks. You're like, oh, okay, it doesn't boost as fast. Okay, maybe I can mess with the boosters a little bit. But it gives you so few parts to begin with. It really, really eases you in. This game actually has like the most extensive tutorials of any game I've played. And the tutorial system's really fun because it'll like give you a really light mech to play with like a really weird configuration, or a really heavy mech, or a medium mech. And like you can feel how those feel. So it kind of inspires you to like, okay, like I didn't want to make a light mech because I just want to have cool big guns. But actually, when I did a tutorial mission with a light mech, I was like, actually, this is super fun to play. Yeah.
So my question then is, FromSoft being the other reason that I haven't played this yet, this is sounding very linear. That is not a FromSoft thing. Is this very much just like a level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, like as you go through and you just boom, 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 boss, boom, 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 boss?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. No, it's like literally that. It's this won't make sense to anybody but you. It's very similar to Ace Combat. It's like the structure is literally the exact same thing as Ace Combat. To like the point where it almost feels like adjacent to Ace Combat in weird ways, especially how like a lot of the Ace Combat missions play out. It does some very similar stuff of like this really high emotion scene, and then there's a big twist in the middle of the mission. And it's like it does that a lot, which I really liked. A lot of fun, yeah.
And then FromSoft difficulty. So where are we talking about difficulty on this? Because I mean that's the thing with FromSoft. You're not getting an easy mode.
Yeah,
gonna piss you off, boss. How does this compare with other FromSoft games?
I think it's probably the easiest From Software game because. So in a From Software game, so for example, what I was saying before, it's like if you have like whatever build, you're never quite sure if you're doing it right. Even I've played like all these games, I'm never quite sure if my build quite makes sense for the thing.
Yep.
So if you get to a certain boss, like, well, I'm just screwed. But in this one, because you can completely change the class of your mech, you're never quite screwed. You just need it. It's like experimenting on it. It's like, okay.
Okay.
And the thing is, like, the difficulty makes sense because it needs to push on you enough to change your mech. If the game was easy, if the game was even like normal difficulty, I feel like it wouldn't really mean anything because it would never actually require you to go in and check. The game is hard. Like, there's no bones about it. The two bosses that I had the biggest issue with, they actually changed in a patch because people are complaining about them. So they actually might be easier now. Well, I hope so, because they were just like insane. But both of those hard bosses were like, I've been playing my mech this way. The way to beat the boss was to change my mech this way, and that gives me a huge advantage. But then I still have to execute. So it's forcing you to not only be. So it's like a game that's like forcing you to be good at playing the game while also understanding these background mechanics, which to me is like how an RPG should be played. Like, and it's just, and most RPGs don't do that. So I think in this one, the difficulty, I would say, feels more purposeful than any From Software game I played. That doesn't mean it's like hard. I mean, it's harder than ones I've played, but like really outside of like one or two bosses, I was like on real, because I really figured out in the background like the RPG systems of how to get my mech just right. I like flew through like huge portions of that game. There is one boss that I'm sure if you get stuck on, you will Google, and then everybody will be complaining about that one boss. But like once you get past that one, it's pretty early on. It makes you so good at the game. I actually think that boss, it's so difficult. It makes you so good at the game that you just rip through the rest of the game. Like,
because you had to like work so hard to get past that guy.
Yeah, yes, and it makes you so good at the game at that point that it's just you just kind of rip through everything else.
Nice,
but yeah, it has the setting that's really good. It has the gameplay that's really good. It's got the RPG mechanics that are really good. And I was just playing it on New Game Plus, which I never do, because I had heard something kind of cool about New Game Plus. I was like, let me just check out what it is. Yeah. So it restarts you back at the beginning. But as you get into missions, you're given additional options of like, I'll give you spoilers for New Game Plus if you really don't want to know. In one of the earlier missions, you go with two forces from one of the other corporations. Halfway through that mission now, you get a call from somebody that says, I will pay you double if you kill those guys. And so from what I understand, the New Game Plus, the story veers off in a different direction and kind of gives you like another what if story. So it's just, cool. That's what I'm just saying. It's like,
it has different endings, you said? There are different endings?
It does. And it was actually kind of cool near the end because and again, like with Dark Souls and stuff, you kind of understand your decisions. But in this one, it's like, I get why this character is fighting for this. And this is why I disagree with this. So I'm going to choose against it or for it or whatever. And it felt really meaningful near the end. And it was just like, there's some really sad fights because you get why they're fighting for what they're fighting for. And it felt just like the fights just were really cool because they had, and again, it's just, that's what I'm saying. It fires on all cylinders. It has that emotional weight, that mechanical fun to play. And then I'm also creating my perfect mech to fight this one particular guy. So it's like, it feels meaningful in like 3 or 4 different ways. It's awesome, dude. It's so fucking good.
Dumb question that only would piss me off and probably not very many other people. What am I missing out by not playing the first 5? Is this like Final Fantasy where it doesn't matter, right? Like there's no connection.
I was shocked. There was like one Google I did of I don't know. It was a spoiler part.
Whatever it is, yeah.
But there are scenes where you're like, oh shit, and you don't need the background to know it's an oh shit moment.
Okay.
So like, yeah, I don't think I looked up anything on Armored Core at all before playing this game, and like I didn't feel lost at all. It's like you just need to know. One corporation bad, second corporation also pretty bad, and these poor guys fighting for their life as you rip through. Oh man, the comms on those guys are so sad. They're like, oh god, he's coming. It's like, it's very similar to like Nier and stuff where you're like, am I the bad guy? But they make that pretty clear pretty early on that you're definitely not the good guy in this situation.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, we are Workforce Gaming. We try and put up new videos every Monday. Subscribe to our channel. Leave a comment below. We'll see you later.
Bye.